All right, welcome back to The Drift. With us again, you know him, no introduction needed, towboat U.S. Captain Clint Allen.
Oh, yeah.
Clint, how you doing?
Very well.
Today we're going to talk about something serious, boat fires. You've seen plenty. We all know they can happen.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about the 5 causes or the main causes of boat fires. And we know you just fought one in a multi-million-dollar yacht, New Bedford, Massachusetts. And I was around that fire and I saw the black smoke, and it burned for quite some time. And when fiberglass and plastics are burning, it's not a good thing, obviously. So what did you do how was that fire fought? What did you guys do to fight that fire?
We were actually just asked to see if we could help out. We happened to be in the area, and the more water we could put on it, the better. So they asked us if we had firefighting capability. And the answer was yes, so that's how we got involved.
So you use your pumps?
Yeah, just the same pumps that we use to if you were sinking.
Right.
We have a attachment hose and a fire nozzle that goes on it.
Okay.
And it's basically just it's not high pressure or like a actual firefighting hose, but it can do the job, pump some water.
Do you know how that fire started? Is there?
I believe it was electrical, but
Okay.
that's about all I know, the extent of it. It was electrical.
So that's dangerous. So typically I've seen situations where they try to, a boat's afire and they try to tow it away from other boats in the marina or get it out. What is that process for towboat? What is your procedure for a boat on fire?
So we'll help firefight if we can, but that's not really our forte. So the fire department usually is responsible for putting out boat fires. We'll help if we can. But I think, like you said, our biggest asset would be to move another vessel that's adjacent to it, downwind of it.
Get them out.
And get them out.
Sure.
So we're saving property there. This was not the case in this one. The wind was blowing, so there was no danger to any other vessels. And the one that was in the area, the owner, just when it started firing up, he took his boat out.
Yeah.
He happened to be there.
Yeah.
And he fired his boat up and removed it.
Yeah, I know that gentleman. He was
Yeah.
having dinner on his boat and with another guy, and I think he said, it's going to be, it's just some smoke. They'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And then they finally decided, let's get out of here, which is what you do, right? You see
Yeah.
danger, you sense danger.
Yeah, he did the right
Get
thing
out.
for sure. Because then at some point he might not have been able to get his boat out,
And that boat, that burned to the waterline.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a shame.
Yeah. It's tough. It's a firefighter's nightmare as a chief of a fire department, because you have to apply water to put the fire out.
Right.
And naturally water sinks a boat. So
Right.
it's a double-edged sword. You need to apply water.
I didn't think of
Eventually
that.
you're going to sink the boat.
So the more water you put on it.
You're going to sink the boat sooner or later.
Yeah.
So as a leader or a firefighter or a chief, the outcome is going to not be good. So it's not I guess for morale it's horrible. You're going to sink the boat sooner or later.
So let's talk about that in a marina. So you see smoke like that person did aside that boat, you alert the authorities, then you should alert everybody on surrounding boats and just get out of the marina, right? Just like you would exit a house that was on fire. Just get out.
Right.
Grab-
Let everybody know, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've seen situations where entire marinas go up.
Yeah, the domino effect, and especially depending when it starts, if there are people in the marina at the time, like this particular incident, you get warning. But if that would have happened at 10 o'clock at night,
Right.
by the time the authorities are notified, it may have already caught another boat on fire, depending on the wind direction. And then it just goes like dominoes.
Yeah, and people are sleeping on boats. They're liverboards.
Yeah.
A boat can be a dangerous place when there's fire and smoke.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of people don't realize that in most boats, I don't know if it's build code on a boat or what it is, that hatch below should be big enough to act as an escape hatch,
Sure,
right?
yeah. You could encounter a situation where you go out your gangway and it's fire.
Right.
If that's where your engine's located or whatever.
Most likely that's where it's going to be.
Right. So yeah, that's a good thought. And I think all hatches, I don't know if purposely, I would imagine probably at some point they realize that needs to be big enough for an escape.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a good thing to look at on your vessel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think to yourself, all right, if I'm asleep below and I can't get out and aft is blocked and there's fire, how do I get out of this boat?
Right.
Because you may say there's an escape hatch or a hatch large enough to escape, but do I have something to step on to get out of that hatch in a panic situation? And
Yeah,
maybe
I
a
suppose
fire drill's not a bad idea in a boat.
Just
Talk
going
to
to say
your
maybe a
family
good
about it.
review of that. God forbid it ever happens, but you need to realize if you can escape. Yeah. I guess that's a real good thought. If you're not strong enough to pull yourself up through the hatch,
Yeah. People don't think about that in boating. Like, everybody thinks about their house and at least 2 areas of egress if there was a fire, and smoke detectors, and maybe a little battery operated smoke detector.
I think now the modern boat's brand new. When you buy I don't know for how many years, but they're putting carbon monoxide and fire detectors, smoke detectors. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. That's a $20 purchase at Home Depot.
Right.
Why wouldn't you get one and put one in?
Yeah.
So often people in boating, they pay all the big money for all the toys and the latest GPS and electronics, but the little things that could save your life.
Neglect the $10.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about underway. So you're underway, and let's say there's a boat fire. Try to put it out. Do you just don your PFDs and jump into the water and hope the boat flows away from you? I mean, what have you encountered that? Have you come across? There was a guy there's a guy in my marina actually who was telling me a story about that about 10 years ago, that his boat caught fire underway, and they just jumped into the water, put their life vests on, jumped in. Unfortunately for them, the boat sort of drifted away, and they're scarred with that. They live with that every day, the memory of that. And that was like 10 years ago. And
it can be scary. So I suppose if you contact the Coast Guard, they're going to advise you to, they don't want you to get in further trouble. So they're ready. Do you have life jackets available? Don them. Perhaps be ready to get in the water. Me personally, I'm going to try and put the fire out.
If you have an extinguisher or auto extinguisher on the boat.
But it's risky because if it's an engine room fire, the minute you supply air to it, you open the hatch and supply air, it can flame up, and it become more dangerous. So, but it's tough. If you don't open it, what are you going to do? It's going to keep burning.
Right.
So it's a tough decision to make. But I'd have a fire extinguisher prepared and give it a shot. You can't close the engine box.
Right.
Try to suffocate it.
And while you're doing it, have your guests and family ready to go.
Right.
Yeah, have to try.
I personally, I would try, but everything has to be calculated. You have to have a fire extinguisher ready. Open it perhaps slowly.
Yeah.
You can't just open it wide open because it might flare up on you. So you got to put a little thought into it. But I certainly would at least try to stop the fire.
And every boat, by code, should have a fire extinguisher on it.
And
that's important.
There is, when you look at the regulations, depending on the size of the boat, depends on the amount of extinguishers, how big they need to be. It's like flares. You can never have enough. I think I have like 5 fire extinguishers on one of my boats. When they get outdated, I continue to keep them. The green meter, it says they're still good. I have them as backup.
Yeah.
So I have like 5 on one boat.
So, my fire extinguisher's probably been on my boat for a couple of years. How often should you check that? Every season to make sure is there a date on the fire extinguisher or?
There is a date, and they're actually, I think they're like 10-year that they're good, but manufacturer date. But there's a gauge on it, and it has a good and bad indicator. And if they're in the green still, I'll still keep them, but I will observe the manufacturer's date and discard them or put them aside as used and get a new one.
Okay.
But the manufacturer, there is a manufacturer date from Kidd is the biggest producer of fire extinguishers. So there's a manufacturer expiration date, but doesn't necessarily mean they're bad.
Again, cost, minimal. when you think about the cost of boating.
Right. You've got to have a
Right.
fire extinguisher. Yeah.
Or two.
I have them in my house. I have
Yeah.
all over the place. They're in my house,
Right.
in my cellar, and in the kitchen. You
Yeah.
have to have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, first sign of trouble, obviously, is probably smell, right? If you smell an electrical burn, then you'll probably see smoke,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you should be well versed on it. There's plenty of information out there about how to fight different kinds of fire. Like a fire extinguisher doesn't work on everything,
Mm-hmm.
or does it? Like the last thing you want to do is throw water on an electrical fire,
Right.
right?
Most the marine fire extinguishers are ABC, so they do wood, gasoline, and electrical.
Okay.
They're supposed to work on all three of them. But there are fire extinguishers that don't work. They're AB, so they don't work on, I believe they don't work on wood. The AB, the C, I think, is the wood. But I'm not sure of the coating on them. But you want to have an ABC. ABC extinguisher.
And we're going to put all of this information on driftsociably.com so you can access that.
Right.
And it's important to know.
Yeah.
It's just one of those
Yeah,
things.
there are different extinguishers.
Yeah.
And the ABC is what you have to have on, or should have on the boat.
And like flares, like you said, you can't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
Why not have one below and one above?
Yeah. If the law requires one, let's say, you could have two. If
Sure.
the law requires two, and again, it's based on the length of your boat. If the law requires two, have three.
Right.
The day you need it, you're going to be glad you had it.
Right.
I recently fought a little 13-foot whaler, and the motor was on fire. Little small outboard motor, maybe a 20 horse or something.
Happens all the time.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a youngster on, a young kid, and he was calm, cool, and collective. He was out motoring around with his buddy. He jumped on his buddy's boat, so there was no danger to him. He was anchored, and I arrived on scene. It was fully involved, and the cover was actually melted already, the motor cover. And I had two fire extinguishers on the particular boat I was on. So I unloaded the first one. The fire went out immediately.
Right.
The second that I ran out of it stopped discharging, the fire flared back up.
Did it?
So I grabbed my second extinguisher, and immediately I was able to snuff it out again. But the minute it ran out of the powder, it immediately fired again. So the harbor master happened to be alongside me as well, and I grabbed his extinguisher, and the third one finally put that engine fire out.
And a small outboard.
And this was a small outboard, maybe 18, 20 inches long, and it took 3 extinguishers to put it out.
I was on one of my memories as a kid, and on the lakes in Maine, I was with my dad, and we were fishing, and one of those old Evernords. He pulled it, caught fire, and went up, and
Backfire.
he didn't have an extinguisher. It was a little 12-foot boat.
Yeah.
So he told me, get to the bow and get ready to jump. I was, 10. Get to the bow and get ready to jump in, get ready to dive in if I can't put this out. So he was able to undo the outboard and take it off the boat, throw it in.
Right.
And it's a good thing I didn't have to dive, because when he threw it in, he saw the handle of the outboard sticking up, and we were like in 2.5 feet of water. So that wouldn't have been good. that wouldn't have been good in the end. For the dive off the bow would have done more damage than the boat.
But he was cool, calm, and collected.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again, you
thought about that.
Think about it. You get away, get far
Right.
away as you can. You be prepared to. You may have to go overboard, And, But hopefully, there's more than 2 feet of water.
And then the thing that's all the rage now on social media are the jet skis that put out boat fires. They'll come around and they'll blow their,
Yeah, I saw a few.
They'll
cool
blow water
videos
on
of
that and
right?
try to put it out. We're fortunate where we boat. We have some pretty good fire response boats.
Yeah.
Fire boats for fires and the like. But some places, again, if you're underway and you're out in the middle of the bay, and the fire starts, and you really have to make that decision. Do we just get in the water?
Right.
Think about which way the boat's going. Take a look at the wind, right? The currents, because you want to make sure if you get in, you get in an area that the boat's not going to start to drift
Well, so the
you.
beauty of it, when that kid did it, and as I said, he was a young kid, and he was very cool, calm, and collective. So as soon as he anchored his boat, now it went up into the wind,
Mhm.
and the smoke was naturally trailing away from him.
Right.
So there was no danger of being overcome with the fumes. He tried. He unloaded his fire extinguisher first,
Yep.
and was unsuccessful, and decided to get onto his friend's boat, which was a good
Smart.
decision. He called the authorities. He actually called his father. His dad called the harbor master, and the harbor master. I went out with him. I followed the harbor master out to the scene, and just happened to be, Johnny on the spot. I was in the right place, the right
Yeah.
time, so I was able to help him out.
Did you ask him for his towboat U.S. membership before
Well-
you put the fire out?
So I was acting as a good Samaritan.
Oh, okay. We'll give you
for
that one, kid.
But it turns out of course, he was a Boat US member,
Right.
and I ended up, after the fire was out, the Dartmouth fireboat came,
Right.
and they assessed it and gave me the thumbs up, and then I towed the boat in because he was in fact a Boat US member.
There you go.
Yeah. So he got a free.
If
tow
not,
in.
it would have burned for a while. All right, let's talk about some of the reasons boats catch fire. I think one of the big ones is the guy who thinks he's a marine electrician and does some of his own wiring work.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen plenty of those kinds of things. You look down into a battery bay and you go, what's going on here,
Yeah, I think that it's probably, I would probably guess, I don't know real statistics, but I would say that electrical is probably the number one cause of boat fires. Recently, man, we did a job, the guy's bilge pump wasn't working, and I just took a peek to try and help him, and it actually had wire nuts on it.
Yeah.
Just an absolute no-no
Right.
for
Really?
the marine environment.
What's wrong with water?
And he's wondering why it wouldn't work. Well, it was corroded to heck.
And all it takes is some fumes in the bilge
Yeah,
and a spark.
yeah.
And that's another one of the top reasons are, not checking, not using your blower, and not checking before you start it up after you fuel. That's basic, right?
Yeah. You have to get into a routine. When I had an inboard motor in one of my personal boats years back, and that was my routine.
Yeah.
The blower would get turned on, and the hatch would be opened before I actually turn the ignition key.
So what
You
happens?
can smell. That's
right.
Your best weapon is your smell.
Yeah,
If
I
you
smell-
smell fumes, it's obvious you're not going to turn the key. So just I'd open the box and give it just a sniff, and that was it. And then go up to the helm and turn the key.
Yeah, and that happens because as you're fueling, gas fumes come into the bilge, come below,
Right.
and then all it takes is that little ignition spark.
Right.
And
Yeah,
you're
and some
blowing the hatch
marinas are
off.
strict. I always followed the rules and for safety of my family. But you're supposed to shut your hatch as well. You're
Right.
to go down below the companionway to go down below. That door should be shut as well. So it could be because the fumes go down. So you don't realize it while you're fueling, and the boat fills up with fumes.
But very good point. Use your nose.
Yeah, that's the best way.
Shouldn't smell gas.
The blower was just, it was
Yeah.
part of the procedure that I had. I turned my blower on, but I always went back and lifted the motor box. Took
Right.
2 seconds.
Right.
So even though you don't know, you can't hear, so the blower might not even be working. You hit the switch and it doesn't work. You know what I mean?
And up you go.
You need to go down and actually smell. That's the best method.
Right.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of electronics on a boat that can go foul. Regulators, there's a lot of amps going on down there. There's a lot of batteries. There's a lot of reason for spark, and typically they're very close to fuel, to the engine.
Right.
And then, so we've talked about battery issues, electrical, fuel line leaks, engine overheating.
Engine overheating.
Okay.
So then what happens is the heat goes into the exhaust, and there's from the engine to the actual exhaust on your boat, there's a rubber hose. And a lot of times that hose burns, will catch on fire, and the people call the Coast Guard and say, I'm on fire. Well, it's actually just that hose burning or melting.
Right.
And it can actually catch on fire.
And you'll smell that rubber burn.
Oh yeah,
You'll
yeah,
smell that.
yeah. Like I said, your
You know?
nose is your best friend. We talked about it
Yeah.
earlier. If you smell, you know you're a boat. Any vibration, any change. If you smell something different that you don't usually smell,
Hmm.
don't just keep going.
Right.
Investigate it, because that could be the onslaught of a fire coming. If you
Yeah.
smell an electrical smell, that's never there. That's usually, I never smell that. Well,
Hmm.
why am I now? So let's stop and investigate this for a moment,
So
Or
that's
rubber.
easy.
If there's rubber burning, it's in
Right.
all likelihood you're overheating. Look at your temperature gauge. You say, oh, geez, I'm running
Shut
hot
down.
here. Shut it down. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So to recap, if you're underway and you smell smoke, you see fire, be careful. Follow proper procedure as far
Mm-hmm.
as how you approach the fire. Have your have your extinguishers ready, and then get the family ready to go overboard. Be ready to go overboard.
Mm-hmm.
Put on your life
Yeah,
jackets. Get your
PFD. No
devices
matter
ready.
the temperature of the water, because you
Yeah.
don't know how far help away
Right.
could take to arrive. So get a PFD on. If you have to go in the water, at least you have buoyancy, and depending on the water temperature, you.
And that would be a good time to make a real distress call,
Mm-hmm.
a mayday.
Right.
On fire. Typically, you'll have boats that come to help.
Mm-hmm.
And to that, what do you do if you come across a boat that's on fire? Say you hear a distress call, and say somebody's hailing for help, and they say my vessel's on fire. We're getting into the water. Should obviously go try to help the people who have abandoned ship, but do you approach a boat that's on fire? Do you just let it drift? I've seen situations where it looks like they let them drift out of the marina and just let them go, and then try to get fire authorities to come and handle it.
So
You don't want to try to tie it up and tow it, right? Just what would you do?
yeah. Well, what I do and what the average boater does is two
Right,
different
exactly.
things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, number one, we want to make sure the people are safe.
Hmm.
So, if they're in the water, get them out of the water, get them on your boat. You don't want to get, even myself, I don't want to get too, it depends on what's
Right.
going on. If the
Yeah.
thing's fully involved, you're not going to put it out with
Just let it
with a
burn.
couple fire extinguishers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Get the people safe first thing. Make sure that the Coast Guard's aware of what's going on. They're going to get the proper agencies to come out, local
Mhm.
fire departments, even the Coast Guard has firefighting capabilities
Sure.
as well. So get the proper authorities. I'll help if I can. Like I said, I'm not going to do much with a fire extinguisher on a boat that's really burning.
Right.
But we could rig our pumps up and get our fire hose going and try to help.
And then you reach a point where you just have to let it burn. The multi-million-dollar yacht that we saw burn in New Bedford,
Mm-hmm.
it comes a point where they just, hit the horn, everyone out, and let her
Right.
go, right?
Right.
Which I think they did in that case, didn't they? And it burned down just about to the water line.
Yeah, so the way that whole thing went, the fire department actually early on, we happened to be in the area, and I got a blow-by-blow from
Mhm.
my captain, and he said the boat's on fire. So oh wow, and then he said the fire department just went on board,
Right.
and I said, oh well, then they're going to put the fire out.
Mm.
And then shortly after, he says, oh, the fire department's abandoning and getting off the boat.
Yep.
And the smoke got bigger and greater and
Yeah.
blacker.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, it was
Let it
fully
go.
involved. So I guess the story goes they couldn't get access to where the fire was, behind the wall perhaps.
Hmm.
Just couldn't get access to
Mm.
it, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And like you said, it eventually burned right to the waterline. There's no stopping it.
No.
Fiberglass is tough.
Yeah. It's a nasty burn.
Yeah, fiberglass is tough because you're putting water on it. When you put water on it, you can actually keep the fire out. And it's amazing. The minute you take your hose or stream away from the fire,
It's back.
it reignites.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult.
All right. So assess situations wherever you are. If you're in your marina, try to put it out. If you have to leave, if you feel like it's getting away from you, alert as many folks as you can while you leave the marina,
Mhm.
especially if it's at night. There could be people living on boats. We've
Right.
seen marinas go up. Be smart about fire protection, and keep an eye on things. Use your nose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully,
Yeah.
Clint, you'll never have to encounter that in boating. But the odds are you probably, take it from me, I did. I was 10, but I did. You're going to encounter something along those lines at some point in your
Very
boating
possible.
life.
Very possible. And having a plan, have a plan. If, like you said earlier on in this segment, you said perhaps a fire drill
Yeah, good point.
for your family. You know, it's good to run through the scenarios.
Clint,
Keep you safe.
as usual, thank you and great information.
Thank you.
The Drift Podcast can be found at driftsociably.com or where all fine podcasts are heard.